Hi there, and welcome to our 2021 Cold Ones for Caregivers campaign, presented by Imagine IT. I'm Kyle Woody, founder and executive director of Jack's Caregiver Coalition, where our vision is a world where guy caregivers never feel alone. And our mission is to improve the way that guys think, feel, and act through every phase of their caregiving journey. In a moment, I'm delighted to introduce you to our latest campaign honoree, Mr. Joe Peterson. But before I do that, a reminder about why we're here. The goal of our campaign is to raise $30,000, enough to make 40 more stories of caregivers support like Joe's possible. We're currently at 37% of our goal, and we need your help to close the gap. Any amount moves us closer to our goal. You can join us for the main event in person at 612 Brewery in Minneapolis, or from wherever you are virtually, starting at 1 p.m. on September the 18th. The event is outdoors. We will have live music by the Burnin' Blue Band, an awesome silent auction, and an impressive beer wall raffle. I want to thank all of our awesome sponsors who make this campaign possible, and thank you to our awesome team of volunteers. And now, joining us is the reason we're all here, our latest campaign honoree, Mr. Joe Peterson.
My name is Joe Peterson. I live in Crystal. I have a wife, Jessica, and two kids, Abby and Jack. I've been a Jack for the Jack's Caregiver Coalition since about midway through last year. And I've got the chance to meet a lot of wonderful people throughout the process, and Kyle. And gosh, I guess how I got to this spot, or how we got to this spot, is my wife, Jessica, was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2012. And so went through chemo and surgery and was in remission for a long time until late 2019, right around Christmas. She had a toothache. We're on vacation, and what ended up happening is a couple appointments later, we found out that she had cancer, that her breast cancer had metastasized to her face and also to her spine. And so my wife, our family, have been dealing with a diagnosis of metastatic breast cancer for a little bit over the last year and a half. Gosh, I'd say for me, it's probably my mental health. I mean, I think life is a challenge, no matter how you slice it. And when my wife first received the diagnosis of metastatic breast cancer, it was just life shattering, right? It changed so much and really turned our lives upside down and created a lot of fear and stress, and it just wasn't something that we were ready for. So for me, it was how, gosh, where do we go from here, and how do I deal with this stress? I couldn't imagine, we were in a position where myself and my kids, we had to see my wife go through some pretty painful and scary times, and that was difficult for everybody, but especially my wife. And I think on my end, it was really my goal to just be the best darn caregiver that I could be. I mean, I'm a caregiver by trade. I'm in human services, and so becoming a caregiver in life wasn't too foreign to me. But again, it doesn't make such scary and terrible news that much easier. So for me, it's like day in and day out. How do I deal with that for myself, for my family? How do I compartmentalize and so that I'm able to deal with what's going on every day, and not only deal with the stress but also feel the happiness, and can be the best for my family and myself. So for me, my mental health challenges, well before this, has always been dealing with anxiety and depression. I'd say in that order.
So well before 2012.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think personally my mental health, those are a couple things that I've always dealt with, even since I was a child, and been trying to learn how to deal successfully with that, and how to move forward and not let it halt and interrupt my everyday life. I think dealing with challenges like mental health or like stress management, anxiety, depression, they can be difficult in general. But when you have so much weight that's placed onto your lives and the lives of your loved ones, sometimes it's just it creates a situation that's just intolerable, and you can't quite you don't always know how to get out of that place or how to get into a better place. And so, gosh, I guess for me, a huge challenge, again, I talked about compartmentalizing, but for me it's huge. How do I how do I break things down into smaller pieces or thoughts so that they're manageable, so that I can deal with them, and help my family deal with them? And I guess probably the biggest thing for me is how do I make healthy, good choices for myself? I mean, a lot of times it's too easy to hide, escape, self-medicate, right?
Yeah.
Have a couple too many drinks, go out and eat too much food, just go take a nap and sleep and escape from the world. And for me, just in general, right? Anxiety and depression. I've had some not so healthy ways of dealing with that in the past, and even if they help in the moment, I found that they haven't helped long term. And you know, you add on a diagnosis like metastatic breast cancer that's so scary. Um, Sometimes I find myself going down some of those negative paths just to make it day to day. And again, I'd repeat, it's a choice. It's and those choices aren't always easy. But how can you stave off some of those things that aren't going to help you be successful, that aren't healthy, and choose ones that are? I think a lot for me, again, I talked about kind of breaking things down, but it's when you're letting all of the fear in, or all of the heavy thoughts that are sometimes too difficult to manage collectively, right? It's like feeling the weight of the world sometimes. And for me, that's for my anxiety, it's um, I find I think too much. My brain kind of goes like a record, and sometimes it can go out of control. And so I'm worrying about what if or what's going to happen now. I mean, gosh, I think with my wife and her diagnosis, the hugest fear was um, what happens if she dies? You know, what happens if she gets sick? And um, gosh, worrying so much about her, worrying about my kids, worrying about myself, and really having to be there through that process. It was a struggle. It's a struggle to not let the situation that we're in, my wife's cancer, consume us. It's a challenge for me to not let it consume me in my every moment, and I think that's where the disease wins, right? And I think if you're gonna fight back a little bit and take some moments for yourself, for happiness, for a mental break, not subjecting yourself to feeling that constant level of worry, of sadness, of pain, and fear is it's essential. And it's hard. I'm not always successful at all. I think I lose more than I win, but you know, you sometimes you win some and sometimes you lose some, and it's back to the drawing board to keep on doing the best you can. Here's what I'd say about that. I think um, if you're dealing with mental health issues, you're not alone. I think the majority of society is dealing with something, right? I mean, I know very few people that don't struggle with some type of mental health type situation. The truth is, you're not alone, right? Most people are in that place, but it's a hard thing to admit. Like you said, Kyle, there's often a stigma around mental health, and it's hard to admit that you're in a bad place and that you need help. And I think most people kind of limp by and get through, and it's easy to hide from it. Well, I think you can take that approach. And I'm a caregiver by nature, and I failed at caregiving a lot in my life. When my wife was first diagnosed in 2012, you know, I thought I could tap dance and caregive at the same time. Like my want for the best and my effort would get me through, and I found myself really hitting the wall even 2 weeks in. Right?
Yeah.
I think mental health is a hard thing, and um, maybe when life is normal, right?
Yeah.
People can cope with different things they have going on and different mental health concerns and get by. But when you delve into such a stressful situation like some of the ones you described, or like my wife's cancer, I mean, just oftentimes put you in a place where your emotional and mental state is exacerbated. Your tendencies for unhealthy mental health or being in a bad place is just in a place where maybe you can't control it anymore. So, yeah, I think if you know you need help, and it's hard to admit that sometimes, I just remind you you're not alone. Reach out. There's people out there for help, and sometimes you have the tools in your bag to deal with the situation you have at hand, and sometimes you don't. And when you don't, um, you need to go out and ask for help. I mean, that's precisely how and why I found Jax and became one in the first place. Self-care is key, right? Outside of different diagnoses, just life is hard, right? And if
What does that even mean, self-care? I mean, aren't you
self-care,
busy taking care of
yeah.
everyone else? How do you
Well,
have
I
time
am.
for that?
Well, I just have a little story, right? I mean, I think, um, gosh, when you're a young adult, you have a lot of time. You can focus on yourself. You have hobbies. You have things that you do just for yourself, to fill your time, to fill yourself up. And personally, I found when I got married, I gained a spouse, and we got a house together, and we started our life together, and that was wonderful, right? Kind of a window opened, but the door of myself and my time for myself and my hobbies, that door started to close a little bit. And I found when we had kids, it closed a little bit more, where I'm sure many of you can relate. I had to spend most of my day focusing on the needs of my family, and keeping track of the events, right? You kind of turn into an event planner, and you're managing life. And I think
Yeah.
that's normal and that's okay. But when that happens, at least I found I got farther and farther away to the things that I did for myself, the things I did to give myself a break, to fill myself up. So that's hard, gosh. And then you throw in a diagnosis like cancer, or something like that. It can really make you feel like it isn't time for yourself. But I think the most important thing, Kyle, I say, make some time for yourself. You're not a superhero, and if you don't take some time for your mental health, some time to fill up your own gas tank, I think it's just a matter of time before you run out of juice. So, for me, what does that look like? Um, Gosh, for me, physical exercise has been huge, right? I think not only for a break, but to work off some of those endorphins,
Yeah.
work out some of the stress. I found joining a gym, and that can be anything. Go for a walk, go for a
Yeah.
run. For me, I wasn't going to do that on my own, so I had to join a gym where I go and have somebody tell me what to do for half an hour, but I make sure that I make it there 3 times a week, whether I want to or not. And there's a lot of days that I don't. But making sure I get there, um, that's just something I need, right? Finding some time that isn't caregiving or isn't taking care of my family, making sure I get out with friends, making sure I maybe go for a walk where I'm alone and have just my own thoughts to worry about for a little bit. I think finding time and space for yourself is, at least for me, has been really, really key, and it doesn't come naturally because you're overwhelmed. Oftentimes, most people know, right? Whether it's just that I think most people are able to function with it.
Yeah.
And you used a great analogy of somebody's engine leaking oil, and maybe it's fine. Gosh, maybe it's fine for 3 months until you leak enough oil that your engine seizes up, um, and you're done for, right? And I think mental health, or dealing with um, certain challenges in life. For me, it's anxiety and depression. I know it's there. Sometimes I don't want it to be there, and I lie to myself and I hide from it. But it's still there, if I'm being honest with myself. And so, what I'd say to you, those of you out there, if you're leaking oil, right?
Yeah.
And you can probably tell
You sense
tell
it.
for a long time that it's been happening, um, and if that is, that's okay. Again, most people are dealing with something. I think personally I fail a lot. There's not enough to go around, right? If there's like, um, right, I probably have about 10% of what I need to fill any given situation, or, um, I mean, that's the biggest thing about being stressed out, right? There's just not enough to go around. So I think recognizing that, I mean, is pretty key. Like you said,
Yeah.
it's going to happen, and um, I'm not suggesting that do a little bit of self care or pick your thing or work out 3 times a week is going to save you from some of those dark spots. It's not, but um, just being real with yourself, and I'd say very forgiving with yourself, because for me, I fail a lot. For me, I hit the wall, and either I'm not as good of a caregiver as I want to be, or I make bad decisions that don't necessarily serve me in the long run, and I gotta remind myself to be forgiving, and let that go, and have a short memory, and move on, and keep on making choices. It's step by step, and all right, this is where I'm going to go with the next step. This is where I'm going to go with the next step. And gosh, sometimes I got to talk myself through every day, maybe 20 times a day. But it's you got to remind yourself it's a choice, and you can do it. Kyle, finding Jax was truly a blessing for me. I think when I called you, I was in a very desperate spot. Gosh, I think cancer is tough, and it was a place where it was such a scary place to be in. And the funny thing is, we had so many people in our corner, right? Hundreds of people who cared for us, who were there. And maybe you can relate, but so many people just say, "Oh my God, we love you guys so much. Let us know how we can help." Yeah. And that just was.
They don't know how to help.
Right. And I think when you're in a situation like this, I can't, like, if I have 100 people who care, I can't tell you how to help me. I almost need a life manager, because I can barely take care of myself. And I found it to be a really lonely place, while there were so many people in our lives that really cared, nobody could really relate. I found myself having the same conversation with every single person. It was always an update of where things were at. And I got to a point where I had to stop telling people. It was too depressing. It was too devastating to have that same conversation over and over and over. And so when I found Jack's Caregivers Coalition, and I called, Kyle was the first person that I talked to. I think we talked about an hour that day. And the first few experiences I had with Jack's was really profound for me, because I found a place in a community with people who understood the place where I was in, where I didn't really feel like, again, very lucky to have so many hundreds of people and family and friends around us that care and would do anything to help, but they're not living this reality, right? And I found a place where I didn't have to explain myself. I didn't necessarily had to talk about where I was at or the challenges that my wife or myself or my family was facing, because I found a bunch of people who truly understood without having to go into great depth, and that was really quite the find for me. I needed that. I needed somebody who could relate and understand where I was at, and the guys at Jax have really understood. I mean, I found the camaraderie is what's really struck me. It's been such a well-run organization, but the people who are in it, just, you don't have to say much, and to have a group of people understand where you're at when it's really hard to describe has been it's been priceless. It's been so helpful, and knowing that I have a community and a crew to lean into, somebody that I can connect with when I'm feeling low or need some help. Again, the whole thing with mental health, you can't always do it by yourself, and so knowing that there's people who understand where I'm at, that I can reach out for that support has been huge. Again, for me, finding a group, for me, it was a really big struggle. Not really being able to connect with somebody who could relate with where I was at or my family was at. I mean, a lot of people are sympathetic, a lot of people are empathetic, but I felt so very lonely. Just being in that position, either a person with a disease or an illness, or being the caregiver for somebody with a disease or illness, it's a difficult place to be in. Sometimes I feel like I'm stuck in a pothole in the middle of the street, and traffic just keeps passing me by, right? Because life keeps on going on, like normal, right? And gosh, I just had this terrible feeling like I couldn't get out and join traffic. I was just stuck, and the hardest part for me was not um, really finding anybody who could relate with that. And when I found Jax, for me, meeting a community of people who really understand that, right? That's the piece I didn't have to explain. I can explain, I could explain and did really briefly where my wife was at, where I was at. Um, but it was that piece that I didn't have to explain that you understood, Kyle, when we talked. I met with, when I first started meeting with other Jacks, that people understood right away. It was just, it was comforting, and I just needed that to find a community who understands. That's the easy one. I think I'd have to go with Rich Anderson. Uh, Kyle, you connected me with Rich as my coach early on in my Jack's career, and uh, Rich has been a real mentor for me. He's kind of took me under his wing, if you would, and we started connecting pretty regularly. And it was really nice to have a support and somebody as a coach who I knew would touch base with me on a regular basis, rain or shine, and so that was really great. And I quickly found that our relationship grew. I mean, I just mentioned that Rich has been a mentor for me, but that quickly became more of a two-way street, right? Because Rich has his own challenges in life and his caregiving journey, and that quickly became much more of a symbiotic relationship where it was more even give and take, where we could be there for one another. And it was just really great to have somebody so supportive in my life, like I said, that was going to be there no matter what was going on, and that I've been able to make friends with to boot.
And that's a wrap on this edition of Cold Ones for Caregivers. Thank you, Mr. Chris Cloutier, our volunteer producer, for pulling this program together. Thank you to all of you for your support. We know that with that support, we will be able to reach our goal and help 40 more caregivers like Joe through their journey. And lastly, of course, thank you to Mr. Joe Peterson for sharing his story with all of us.